be open to questions, but make sure our questions are also in order. That would be great. And if we could also stand for the pledge, I would like to open the meeting that way, if that's okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so tonight I am presiding as chair because Councilor Quigley is out, and he had asked at the last meeting that we try to hold our questions until the end of a presentation, but I'd also like to add that if you need like a definition for something in order to understand the presentation, those may be appropriate questions to ask. And we left off with the parks presentation, so, but we have to approve the minutes first. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? And is there a second?
Second.
All right, so moved by Councilor Conquest, and Luke has seconded. Thanks.
Luke Skywalker seconded. Would be the first thing.
All right. Go ahead and present. Thank you.
Good evening.
Lance. Microphone.
You guys can't hear me?
No, it's for the camera.
For the camera?
Yes.
All right, very good. Sorry. Good evening. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Lance Ludwig, and I am the Director of Public Works. This year marks my 4th year as Public Works Director. This will be my 4th budget for the city. Before starting this chapter of my life, my professional career, I had been a civil engineering consultant for a number of years in the Portland metropolitan area, basically designing and building developments throughout the Portland metropolitan area and down through the valley. When I started this job for the city, one of the first things I noticed was how dedicated our public works employees were, and how professional they are, and how well they treat the citizens of this city. And I have to tell you, these jobs that they perform are very diverse, and they're plentiful. We are the guys that get called when your water is discolored, or not working, or if your toilets are not flushing normal. We're the guys that get called because of a bad sidewalk, or because of a pothole, or in Stayton, those are plentiful calls, and they're quite colorful sometimes because the citizens don't like their streets. We're also the guys that get called if there's a dead animal in the road, or used condoms in the street. We're also the guys that get called when there's vandalism in the parks. Some of these things you guys, the city and the public does not realize, but that's who gets called, the Public Works Department. We're on call 24/7, 365, and we take pride in our work, and I believe we represent the city of Stayton well. The Public Works Department continues to work for all people of Stayton, all the citizens, all the taxpayers. The Public Works Department is responsible for operating and maintaining the wastewater treatment plant, the sanitary lift stations, the underground sanitary sewer systems, the stormwater systems, the water treatment plant, which treats the very water you drink, the water pipes that deliver that water to your homes. Our drinking water, by the way, has been voted the best tasting surface water in the state for 2 years running. We're also responsible for maintaining our streets, sidewalks, pathway systems in the city. This includes repairing potholes, sidewalks, ADA handicap ramps, performing slurry seals, and paving streets. The Public Works Department is responsible for the operation and maintenance of our growing parks inventory, our parks restrooms, and our playground equipment in our parks. But these are the only things that people can see. They're behind the scenes. We review building permits, right-of-way permits, site development permits. Basically, we try to make sure the building development that occurs in this city is performed up to the standards and meet the agreements that were reviewed and approved by our city council. Our Public Works Administrative Office also manages our public facilities that are for rent. We manage the Community Center, the Jordan Bridge, the Clarence Adams Community Garden, and the newly furnished concession area in Pioneer Park. The Public Works Department stays busy, and we're proud of our work and proud of that we serve the taxpayers of the city. Some of the highlights in the last 3 years are impressive, and the people of Stayton should be proud. They include: we eliminated the Fern Ridge lift station and created a gravity sewer line for future expansion, saving the operational cost of a lift station. We've designed a 24-inch force main down Jetter's Way. It's a master plan project, going to be required for any kind of future growth in our city. We've cleaned and repaired miles of sewer line to help the city reduce treatment costs. We were named best tasting waste, or the best tasting. Excuse me.
Best tasting wastewater?
I don't want to be a part of that. We were named the best wastewater treatment facility in the state of Oregon in 2016. The people down there are proud of their work, and we should be proud of them as well. For the water fund, we've installed 8-inch water line down High Street, eliminated an issue where we didn't have any kind of fire capacity at all. If a house started fire, it would have burnt to the ground. That no longer is the case. We've replaced the 8-inch water line down Marion Street last year, over 1,000 feet of that. We're designing and we'll be starting construction on a 16-inch water line in Shaft Road. There's 1,300 feet of 16-inch water line. It's a master plan project that will finally give us a loop in our city that we can loop water to all areas of our town. Right now, we can't do that. We don't have the capacity. That too is a master plan project. We performed a tracer study in preparation of a contact time design at our water treatment plant. For any kind of future capacity, we're going to have to increase our contact time. And in order to do that, we need to determine what that required contact time is before water goes out into our system. When we perform that test, we're getting ready for a design of the the vessel, whatever we come up with. And we were named best tasting surface water in Oregon for 2017 and 18. Very good. That's a very good reward for the services that we render. Stormwater. We've cleaned out and regulated the Virginia Street Stormwater Conveyance Channel, eliminating flooding in the backyards of people along that road. Installed 3 pollution control manholes, 2 pollution control catch basins. We're designing currently a 10-acre basin, stormwater detention basin. It'll be constructed this summer. This is part of an agreement that the City Council came to with the Sandy Ann Water Control District several years ago. It's part of a $1.5 million grant we received from the state of Oregon, from state lottery dollars. This will conclude that grant when we're completed with this, but it'll be a 10-acre up to a 27-acre detention basin that will meet the needs of that MOU. For streets, we paved Washington Street from First Avenue to Evergreen Street. We paved Western Avenue from Regis to the west end of Western Place. We paved Marion Street from 1st to 7th Avenue. We will be paving, if some of you have realized already, Virginia Street from Evergreen Avenue to East 4th Avenue. We're performing a transportation system plan update as we speak. That'll be a 2-year project. For the parks, we've completed the Pioneer Park upgrade plans and construction. That was a $2 million project. We had $700,000, so we went out and we had to pare down that park project. We had to go out and raise $100,000. Most of that was done within our parks, our public works office. We had an administrative assistant that went out and personally raised $75,000 for that project. That came out of the Public Works Department. We purchased the Putney property for Mill Creek Park. We're currently designing a master plan for that. We've designed and constructed the Stayton Community Dog Park. We have relocated the Stayton Community Garden to Evergreen Street this past year in partnership with NORPAC. And we've upgraded the concession area at Pioneer Park to be rented. It's been a busy and eventful 3 years, and the Public Works Department is looking forward to the future and the exciting projects that will take place. Now, getting back, I present to you the 2018-19 fiscal year budget. And we will start with the Parks Department. Parks Department. I won't go through too many of the accomplishments there. You can see some of them mimic what I've just talked about. If you have any questions regarding those, please don't hesitate. As far as personnel, we are going to be increasing a seasonal park worker for the summertime. That'll run from July through September to help Bob Parsons out, doing a variety of park issues. Each year, last year I think we either purchased and or inherited through development close to 30 acres of parks. We have one parks guy. And that is on top of the 104 acres that we already owned. We have one parks guy to go around and maintain that. So we're going to hire a person for this summer to help Bob out maintaining those parks. Strategic issues, short term. We're preparing a master plan for Mill Creek Park. We need to do this. We realized we needed to do this when we decided to purchase Mill Creek Park. In order to go get financing to fund these park projects in Mill Creek, we're going to have to probably go for a lot of grants, some large dollar grants. In order to do that, you want to prepare a master plan so you can make a professional presentation to the OPRD and other funding agencies. So we're working on that currently. We continue to provide professional maintenance services to all our parks. I think if any of you go to the parks, you've probably seen Bob out there. Long term, we need to it's my personal opinion, I think we need to find a source for funding of our parks. If the city wants to continue asking developers when they develop to donate parkland, we're going to need to figure out how we're going to fund those parks. Right now, it comes right out of the general fund. I think we need a dedicated source going to those parks. Right now, we have the library levy. I don't know what, Andy, maybe you can share with us how much we get annually with that levy, through those levy dollars, but the Parks Department gets 10,000 of that. That's it. That doesn't pay for Bob's a quarter of his salary. And the rest of it, we got to maintain the parks with. I'm not sure how we do it, but it's something that's probably going to have to be talked about in the coming years. We want to continue working on our master plan agendas, Parks Trail. There's been a lot of support in the community of fulfilling our Parks master plan in our Parks Trail system throughout the community. I only think that benefits our city. Challenges and opportunities short term: providing enough staffing, labor desired for service levels that the city of Stayton and their residents want. Procuring land or easements for our trail systems. Capitalizing on volunteer groups. We do as much as we can with that now. We go into the schools, we talk to the churches, the Boy Scouts. In the Public Works office, we pretty much manage the iServe day, which is all of our community churches get together and they perform services. That is managed through my department. Working with the other departments in the city, we find things for them to do, and those are the kind of volunteer groups that we work with. Long-term, secure sustainable funding for desired parks and recreational services. I think I pretty much addressed that. That'll be something we'll need to talk about here in the future. Changes. Park maintenance increase due to increased parkland. Simple as that. We got more land, we need to have more maintenance, more money, more dollars for maintenance. Performance measures, 13.7 acres of neighborhood parks. We got 104 acres of open space, that's Riverfront Park and Wilderness Park, and now we've got Mill Creek Park. We mow, we edge, daily cleaning of 3 restrooms, maintain the parks, the trails, outdoor basketball. I mean, we maintain every square foot of those parks as the best of our ability with one parks personnel. That's it. One guy. It's tough to do. And we maintain all the irrigation in the parks and the community center and the library and the courthouse. Park capital. We got the Mill Creek Park master plan going right now. 2017, 2018, I think we budgeted $25,000. That will probably be used. The RFP for that master plan came in at $29,000, so we'll probably be using upwards of $10,000 this fiscal year on that master plan. The reason for that is that we had some wetlands that we found on the site, and we're going to have to do a wetland delineation and work with the Division of State Lands to find ways to remove that wetland so we can build our park. In order to do that, it's going to cost us a few extra dollars that was not anticipated in the first phase of the master plan. But in order to go forward, we need to figure out what we're going to do with those. So we're probably going to be spending more than the $29,000. We'll probably be close to $35,000 when it's all said and done, which is why we have an additional $10,000 in there for the master plan. Jordan Creek Bridge, or the Jordan Bridge, this is ongoing. We have many repairs that need to happen to the Jordan Bridge. Until last year, we didn't have a funding source. Just sat out there. We took on this resource, but it's a liability when you look at it. It's a liability, all right? And we haven't taken care of it since we rebuilt it. Last year, we dedicated $100,000 for the repairs that need to be made. I put that project out to bid twice. We didn't get one taker to come in and do the work. So it's ongoing. We're either going to decide to go out and find somebody and hire him to do it, or we're going to put it out to bid and see if we have any luck. But that's just the story here in Stayton, finding contractors that want to come and work here. There's been a number of projects like that. Tennis court resurfacing. Our tennis court needs to be resurfaced. Just take a walk out there and you can see it's a $32,000 project, and then $20,000 for equipment upgrades throughout the parks. That's pretty standard. Bob does a very good job of inventorying our parks equipment and inspecting those. He's a certified inspector, and we budget up to $20,000. That does not mean we will use it. And as you can see, this is the parks operations funding. $230,000 is transferred from the general fund for parks. $10,000 comes from the local option levy. And you can see down below the effective property tax rate for parks is 39 cents. And you can look and you compare that to other cities of our size, and we are near the bottom for our parks. But if we want parks, we need to start thinking about how we're going to fund them. That's all we have for parks. Do we have any questions regarding the Parks Department? Or Mr. Mayor?
Lance, it's only been, excuse me, it's only been 20 years since we rebuilt that Jordan Bridge. Expected life on those, which?
No idea. It's built out of lumber. We've already replaced the longitudinal stringers at a cost of 20, 30 grand a couple years ago. We had an engineer, a structural engineer, come and do an inspection on the project. Upwards of $150,000 of repairs need to be done. We'd spent $30,000 last year just repairing a couple of blocks for the cross members. It's an expensive bridge to maintain. It's a liability. And the only mechanism for funding that is general fund or parks, a parks fund. And we don't have a way to fund our parks right now. It just comes right out of general fund.
But those things were, that's why they built those covered bridges, because they would, with a roof on them, they'd last longer than an ordinary.
The problem with our covered bridge is that roof, go out and look at it, it extends 8, 10 inches beyond the roof. I mean, rain comes right down, almost vertical, and goes right into the bridge. That's the problem. We had so much rot on that side. We opened it up last year, and there was rot on the cross members down below, because there's nothing stopping the water coming in. They just go right down and it sits, and it rots out the cross members. We've got pictures of them.
And most bridges that are used for driving on?
Can you please talk to the microphone? Thanks.
Most of the bridges that you drive on don't have trees over the top of them dropping needles and leaves on them.
Well, that's an issue too. The roof probably needs to be replaced, and
Priscilla.
Councilman Gladwell, I'm sorry, you want to call on? That's
Oh,
right.
you can, that's fine.
Priscilla, you got a question?
Kind of a silly one, but how much do we make by renting it out?
I don't have those numbers with me, but I can assure you it's about $4,500 a year.
It's nothing.
Nothing. I don't even think I could get the needles blown off the roof for $4,500. It'd cost that much to put the appropriate erosion or the appropriate DEQ sheeting up on the side of it so it doesn't fall in the creek, so we don't get fined. I mean, that's really what we're looking at. Mark?
No, there's a statement here that the budget should not be rubber stamped. It should be examined, considered, discussed, and questioned. And I apologize for doing that, but
You don't need to
that's my
apologize.
nature. Lance, it's first of all, it's an open discussion on. You are fine from DEQ. I'm looking at the Statesman Journal article, which was a press release from DEQ. It was like $23,000 and change. I mean, do we, as much as that bridge is something there? I mean, it's not the original bridge. It was rebuilt after a fire. It is falling down, Lance is correct on one side. It already cost us a $23,347 fine, roughly. I mean, what would it cost to be gone? I know that's a sacred cow and a city icon, but is it something that we want to invest $100,000 year after year in?
That's something you need to bring up before the city council. That's not a decision that I'm going to make.
Yeah, I know, it's a
So
sacred cow.
this is the wrong forum for that to be honest. What I can speak to is, yeah, there was a $20,000 fine. And I guess it could be because I went out there and tried to clean it up. I had it pressure washed. I hired some inmates to come out and pressure wash. Some of the paint chips went in the water. Took one day. A contractor in the area, because he didn't get the paint job, he didn't get the job to do it, called DEQ. They came out, and then we went before DEQ 3 times. Tried to explain to them what this was.
Lance, I don't know if I'd go into the details.
Don't you be worried about it. It's not your
Yeah.
fault, Lance. It's
Counselor
DEQ.
Glidewell, if you want to.
Yeah, in obviously, in looking at the budget and what's on it, a lot of times, the bottom line or the cost of something has a more far-reaching impact than what we're seeing on the paper, such as tourism, such as other things that impact that. I mean, I'm a very small fighter, but when I was operating a bed and breakfast, the Airbnb, I got asked almost every time anyone was in that about where that bridge was for them to go look at it. So again, anytime that we're looking at what we have in the budget, there's a bigger reach than just what's on the paper and what is to be spent on it. So just that we would need to consider those kind of things when we're thinking about funding too.
Again, that's probably for a city council decision and talk, not budget committee.
Madam Chairman, is it appropriate to ask other questions regarding the park zones?
I'm actually going to let Brent address Lance.
You mentioned that you weren't successful in getting any of the bids returned. Couple of questions.
Can you
Are
talk
they
into the
prevailing
microphone?
wage jobs?
Or what?
Is that a prevailing wage contract?
Can you talk into the microphone?
I'm sorry. It was over $50,000, so yes, it would be a prevailing wage.
Okay. And in your opinion, what seemed to be the problem? Did you fix the amount maximum of the bid going in, or did you not get any response at all?
We didn't get any response at all.
I have a question to follow up that.
Sure.
SIO has 5 covered bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Did you look into who restores their bridges at all?
I've looked into several contractors that restore bridges, including the one that restored it the previous year. Yeah, so I haven't, no, but I haven't looked into SIOs.
Point of clarification.
We have the Oregon State Bridge contractor that's just south of Stayton, reached out to them. I mean, this is a contracting group that's not more than a mile from
Silo's bridges.
not more than a mile from the North Santiam River. And that's what they do, but they didn't want to bid on it.
Point of just a clarification, the SIO bridges are active highway bridges. Ours is considered an ornamental bridge over a park. So there's highway funds.
Thank you for that. I was just wondering if he had reached out to the people that already restore covered bridges, so.
I can't say that they restored covered bridges in the past, but bridges are one the same. They're structural.
Okay.
I'm an engineer, that's how I look at it. It's a structural member, and I've reached out to several.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions regarding the parks? Yes, Councilor Cronquist?
Going back to, are we just on parks, or are we going to the other ones that we've touched on? Because he's touched on several of his.
I think for right now we should start with
Sorry.
parks.
We're just in order of parks right now.
Let me flip to parks.
Looks like you have a lot of yellow tabs that you needed there.
Yeah, Post-its died in the service of the community.
Looking forward to it.
Oh, yours are easy. I mean, it's just, these are points, it's not meant to be, I don't mean to be a hard rear, but I have questions that,
I'm the expert in the room. I
Yeah.
don't think any question you have is going to be too hard.
no, it isn't. In parks, on the Parks Fund budget, I agree that we need to find a firm bit of funding. The library, I believe, Andy, was 300,000, 117. We re-upped it back in 2017.
Yeah, to go with the property tax information here, just to follow up on that, the 60-cent levy results in an estimate of about 346,000. There's 10,000 dedicated to parks. And then the library pool, the pool gets 50.4% of the remainder, and library gets 49.6% of that. That's around 167,000 each.
And that fund, that is up for renewal in 2019, as I recall?
No, that was renewed
5-year?
in 2017, if I recall. So it's good for another 3 or 5. The second year, there's 3 more years after this. The council has had a practice of putting that out 1 year before its expiration, just so that there isn't, if it was not passed, they'd have time to do something different in terms of consideration.
So we might want to, as council, consider cutting the pie into allocating more to the parks pie in the future.
You have to go back, in the future, certainly you could look at that. You could look at increasing the amount of the local option. You could also look at coming up with different fees that could be part of the utility bill as opposed to a local option. One of the challenges with local option is they expire, and you have to go out and spend a lot of time and energy getting the approval form versus a fee structure. But in terms of a permanent funding source, the local option tax I wouldn't call as a permanent source, because it just again requires ongoing political capital as well as operational time and so forth to continue to keep the funding in place. Seen other communities go through a process where they separate the parks or library from the city itself and create a separate district that is a larger tax base, something, say, that goes out beyond the city limits of Stayton, that brings in a bunch of additional property and creates a funding mechanism and can still be part of the city government from an oversight perspective. But it's a big issue. As Lance showed on that previous slide, there's a number of communities that are in similar positions as you in terms of size, that have a parks budget that is very tight, and with the taxing structure within Oregon, you can see Tualatin, Valley, Bend. Those are 2. Crook County is another. North Clackamas is another. Willamette Lane's another. Redmond actually is another. Chehalem is another. River Road's another. Literally every one that's up there, with the exception of, I'm not sure of Hood River, I know about Stayton, but every other city to the left of Hood River, that in River Road is a local option. Those are all special districts.
Well, Lake Oswego, coming from, has its own parks part of the property tax.
Which one is that?
The city of Lake Oswego has a parks property tax.
Yeah, they also have a $5.60 tax rate, and their assessed value per home is probably 3 times what it is here.
Okay, so this stuff sounds like it's things that could be brought up at like a council meeting or something like that. If there's any more specific budget questions for the parks, not about future funding options, if there aren't any of those types of questions that are specifically about our parks fund, then I'd like to move on, if that's okay. I don't hear any questions.
Okay, street fund. The staffing for the street fund will remain unchanged. We have 1 person that's full-time on the streets. He actually does more than just streets. He actually, this past year, worked at our water treatment plant for a good majority of the time. So it's more than 1 person there. He does a lot of everything. Accomplishments, we swept 1,466 curb miles, 973 cubic yards of material removed. I won't go through all of these. Virginia Street was paved, will be paved May and June of this year, probably sooner than that. We've replaced 119 street signs, vegetation from street vision clearance to make our roads safer. And we collected 473 pounds of food during our fall cleanup that went directly to the food bank. Strategic issues, short-term achieve maximum performance of our existing streets. We're always striving to do that. We reduce potholes throughout the city, replace old decrepit sidewalks, increase ADA handicap ramps throughout the city, and make our town more accessible to our friends that aren't blessed with being able to walk upright like the rest of us. Long-term, upgrade the overall level of street performance by expanding the city's street maintenance program. Establish a partnership with Marion County to reduce costs for slurry seals and street paving projects. We started that this year. We have projects coming up in August. Our slurry seal project, which we haven't done here before in Stayton. We reached out to Marion County and we got on their contract because they perform slurry seals throughout Marion County. And of course, their economies of scales are much greater than ours. So we piggybacked on their contract and we were able to reduce the cost of slurry seal by up to 50%. So we're going to be able to do twice as much road maintenance this summer than we normally would. And we're trying to expand that project in the future to include overlays, paving, things like that. So hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to benefit from the economies of scale with that as well. Long-term, maintain street maintenance funds so the city, state and cities, citizens continue to see improvements to our transportation system investments. Street fund. Oh, sorry, I didn't get one up there. Passage of a local gas tax, May of 2017, generated $170,000 to go into our street fund to help pave roads. That's something the citizens of Stayton voted on. We had a survey done in the fall of 2015. They said our streets are one of the top priorities here to get our streets up and working. And they backed that up last May when they voted for that gas tax, so that's good. And we have an increase of $191,000 in our capital projects funds. Street fund, capital, Kendall Way street improvements for 2018-19, $625,000 job. Portion of that will be paid for by SDCs because it is a collector road as part of our transport system plan. That road will be built probably next year, sometime next spring. And we're the transportation system plan is a 2-year project. We're well on our way with that. Should be done June 2019. And that concludes the street fund. Do I have any questions for that? Yes, I do.
Yeah, when you were talking about joining forces and being able to do the slurry twice as much as what we did before, the gas tax money and the other additional funds that we normally hadn't had in previous years, what projects, how has that increased, the projects that, I mean, are we getting to, how many, are we getting to do so many more miles, or?
No, I'll tell you what we've normally done in the past. And I think when I brought this state gas tax, or our local gas tax presentation to the city council, some of the highlights. For the last 20 years, we have spent almost $0 on our streets, which is why when you drive home, you're going to be running over cracks and potholes, and our streets are just decrepit. Yeah. So now, instead of, in the last 5 years, we spent $150,000 to $200,000 on our streets, which will pave maybe 4 or 5 blocks. Mm-hmm. Now we're up to $450,000, $500,000 for our streets. We're going to be paving Kendall Way, which is a 34-foot wide road, 920 feet long, and we'll probably be able to do Western Avenue, which is another quarter to a half mile long. Right. And that's in 1 year. That would normally take us 3-4 years.
Right. Okay, that's what thank you.
Luke, go ahead.
What is a slurry seal?
It's a emulsified asphalt. It's liquid with sand in it. Okay, these are done for roads or streets that really don't need a whole lot of maintenance. The structural integrity is still there. There might be cracks. And I think Alyssa put that out on our Facebook page that recently we had Quail Run subdivision, because that's one of the subdivisions that are going to be slurry sealed. And down in Weldon,
The swamp.
we're going to be doing a subdivision down there. We had put tar in the cracks, That's really the worst-case scenario for a road that needs a slurry seal. All right, you seal the cracks, the big cracks. And then the slurry comes in, it's emulsified asphalt with sand in it. It'll fill all the cracks and micro cracks in the road so water won't permeate through there and explode the road. It's a maintenance thing. It's something you probably want to do once every 5 years to a road. Prevents water from permeating into the asphalt in the wintertime, and it breaks up, and then we have to reconstruct it, in a period of 10, 15 years.
Counselor Conquest.
The slurry seal's great, thank you, Lance, it'll help the roads last a lot longer. Question, we have, looks like FTEs, 15-16, 1, 16-17, 1, 17-18, 1, 18-19 proposed 1 FTE. Personnel services, and I go round it to the 1,000, 83,000, 85,000, 95,000, 89,000. In 18-19 with 1 FTE, we jumped from 89,000 to 189,600 for personnel services. But we haven't changed our number of FTEs. Why did somebody get a $99,900 raise?
Yeah, you see the Jeep I was driving out there?
I love your Jeep. It's a nice Jeep, man.
I have to look at that, Mark.
Yeah, I've got it. Again, that goes back to the UAL contribution. There's a $95,700 budget for the UAL.
But there's only 1 FTE.
It doesn't matter, again, if we go back and go through the process, what we did is we took the money from the vehicle fleet replacement program.
Yeah, which is great,
that
thank
went
you.
back here. And 100% of that money is going into the city UAL.
Which is great. There's 100,000, there's 99,900 difference for the same number of FTEs. And that's.
They didn't divide it up
But
evenly.
it's not based on FTE, salaries, or anything else. It's just dollars from that pot of money going in here and then going into the retirement account. I mean, we could come up with a different methodology. That's the methodology that we use.
It just stood out. Somebody
Right,
got a
yeah.
$99,900, an $89,000 employee got a $99,000 raise, stood out.
So that's just a one-time. In the next budget, it would not be there. It would then drop back down to a,
Correct.
Vehicle replacement fund to the pool,
yeah.
to the.
with the
street
cost
fund
of
and-
living wage increase and all that stuff factored in. Okay.
Right, yeah, and all that details, in the line item, in the back of your budget book.
Oh, he does yesterday.
Does anybody else have any questions regarding the street fund budget?
All right, moving on. Water fund, one of my favorites.
Are we doing the street SDC fund as well, Kevin?
The SDCs are coming at a later time.
Thank you.
The water fund, staffing remain unchanged from, actually we're reducing, and that's an administrative thing, I believe. Maintenance workers, Cindy, can you speak to Andy? We went from 2.3 to 2.0.
It's facilities.
Yeah, there's just a facilities person that was in here inappropriately last year. We've got them to the right
All
spot
right,
this year.
so it was a miscue last year. All right, very good.
Well, that's not miscue, it's just we reclassified them.
All right, very good. Accomplishments, again, for the 3rd time tonight, we won Best Tasting Surface Water in the state of Oregon. This is the 2nd straight year. That's pretty outstanding considering we haven't ever won it before, and we've had that treatment plant for a long, long time. So that's because of the good hard work of the people that work for the city. We also got a Best Tasting 2nd place award soon thereafter from the city of Salem. They had a water tasting blind test. We got 2nd place. So needless to say, you're drinking very good water, some of the best tasting water in the state. We will be starting construction on a 16-inch water line in Shaft Road. I think I spoke to that earlier. We installed 265 radio meters in the city. We completed a citywide project. Now our operations guys can get our water bills and read the meters in less than a day, where it used to take several days to do with 2 people. Now 1 person can do it in a matter of hours. So something we've been striving to do for over the last 4 or 5 years, and we finally met that. And we performed the contact time tracer study down at the water plant. Short term, ensure funding is sustainable for continued maintenance and capital improvements. We always want to invest in our infrastructure. I know in the past we haven't done that, but I think Andy, as a financial consultant, can speak to, and maybe he will, is that even though we don't have a specific problem in perhaps some of our water lines, it devalues over time. Unless we keep improving our system, the value of our system and our city declines. And is that accurate, Andy? Or
Yeah, I think,
and this is for all our utilities.
yeah, I mean, it, like the streets, you're going to see that deterioration if you're not putting that investment in. The difference between streets and water or streets and sewer, you can see the streets. I mean, so the same thing's happening with those systems, but it's underground and to some degree, maybe out of sight, out of mind. But yeah, it does need to be reinvested in. And I think, some of the information we presented earlier showed, what is that level of investment that the city needs to be making? And if you're not making it, certainly creating the dollars so that you have the capacity to do that is, I think, a prudent thing to be doing. So your water system is in an area, I think, where it needs additional resources at some point, to be at a sustainable level for the community.
Okay, so long-term, we'd like to design and construct a contact time system. That probably won't happen for a few years, but I put it on as a long-term issue. We want to complete master plan priorities and find an additional water source. Something that maybe a couple of you know about, but some of you may not. It's something that the city's going to be faced with here in a few years is the Detroit Dam project. That's really going to stretch our resources thin to try to provide water to this town. And so we are continually, the administration and myself, continually monitoring this, going to meetings, trying to figure out what we're going to do to meet our needs. But when I put down here, find an additional water source, that's kind of what I'm referring to. Right now, our city is dependent on the North San Am River. This last winter, we had a fuel spill up there that we weren't notified about. I found out about it on a Saturday night by watching the news. Our guys went down there and shut our plant down like that. Middle of the night, went down there and shut it down. We ran water reserves for the next 4 or 5 days until it was an all clear. But those are the kind of situations we need to be planning for. And one of the things right now is we have Salem water supply as a backup, which is great. They produce a lot of water, but I think we need to start looking at an additional water source as well. So, long term. Challenges, opportunities. Continue to be effective and efficient management of the utility, use best management practices, and continue to the water system upgrades. We have a lot of old steel pipe out there, rust, water leaks. We need to continue to perform citywide water leak checks every 5 years, fix those leaks that we find, replace old steel lines with ductile iron pipes. So we're not wasting the water that we're pulling out of the river, and we're actually giving it to the citizens instead of into the ground. So those are things that we need to continue to work on. Ensure the future water quality treatment. Continue to work with the North San Am Watershed Council to support our watershed. And again, find an alternative source of water. I see 43% there, but I can't read it from where I am. Increase 43% for the capital outlay for the 16-inch water line. This is a huge project. Haven't done something of this size in the city. It's a 16-inch water line. Most of our water lines here in the community are 8 inches or smaller. 16-inch, it's a major trunk line. It supplies most of the water in this city. It is a master plan project, and a good 43%, I think it's 43% of those funds will be paid for by water SDCs. So we'll be transferring money into the fund to pay for that water line. Huge project, 1,300 feet of 16-inch water line. It's going to be done, half of it done hopefully in June, and the other half in July. But that's how we're kind of working. It depends on what kind of bids we get back.
Where is that going to be done at?
Shaft Road.
Shaft Road, okay.
Basically by the new subdivision, from there just about up to First Avenue. Water fund performance standards. Operate and maintain sand filter treatment, water treatment plant, 44 miles of water lines. We repair water lines, meters, replace fire hydrants, leaking lines, flush lines, you name it, we do it. fastest water system we have here. We installed 265 radio meters, replaced 79 water meters, and we're going to be constructing a 16-inch water line. Again, there it is, the 16-inch water line, Shaft Road, $300,000. A portion of that will be coming from our water SDCs. We're going to be installing a new bleach tank at the water treatment plant. It helps provide bleach to our water. That's our chlorination. That's our disinfectant for our water. We need a new tank. Cost of about $35,000. And we're going to be contributing $25,000 from the water fund to a new service truck. And that is it for the water fund. Are there any questions?
Counselor Cronquist, you had a question?
Two questions. First of all, I'm assuming, and Andy can probably check this one, page 78, line item, personnel services is $108,300 increase. I'm assuming that's a UAL as well, because FTE.
Right, 95,300.
We went from, 372 to 479, 500. So personnel services line item, water fund budget, 108,000, that's UAL.
Yes, 95,300.
Can we just ask if all of the personnel budgets are UAL related?
There's four. There's the general fund, non-departmental, which we covered. There's the street fund we covered, the water fund just covered, and then you're going to see it also in wastewater, all other funds. It's not.
Well, I just figured if we asked them all at once, we wouldn't get it.
Yep.
Well, only about half of them have it, that's the question. So, and the other question is, Lance, in turning the limits into lemonade, with the, assuming Detroit Dam goes dry in a couple of years, can we, as we build that water retention detention facility, repurpose that, sell that back to, no, it's just going to evaporate away or soak into the soil?
No, we don't.
We won't use it for water treatment, but for irrigation.
You don't understand what that is. That's for storm events.
Right.
Right? And
So-
it goes out to Mill Creek. You're not going to be using that. It could have heavy metals in it. It could have all sorts of things.
No,
You don't
that's
use stormwater for that.
That's fine.
I'm just saying, there's no multi-purpose there.
Mr. Mayor, you had a question?
Lance, how much effort are we spending, time, I guess, and material maintaining fire hydrants? Small thing, big thing?
Well, no, we budget for it annually. We may replace one or two, but then when we do a street project or a water line project like the Shaft Road, we're probably going to install 3 or 4 along there because it's needed.
Okay.
If you look at our master plan, we have an exhibit in there that shows our entire city and where all the fire hydrants are and where they need to be. And there's a lot of areas that we don't have fire protection because we don't have fire hydrants there, or the lines are undersized.
Okay.
I think I spoke about that earlier in the water section. We put a water line on High Street. Every house on that street could have burned down because we had no fire protection. So that's kind of what we're working towards.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question regarding the Detroit Dam. In the budget, is there anything that is in here that is planning financially for this alternative water source that we're needing?
No, that's kind of a long-term thing. Really, the Detroit Dam issue is a short-term thing. I mean, we're there. We need to be, we haven't planned for, I don't know what we planned for.
It's short-term, but it's also supposed to affect the quality of the water, and
could.
Salem has the water rights, correct?
Perhaps. See, there's a lot of information that's kind of dynamic. Salem doesn't even know if the water is going to be high enough in the river to get water.
And so do we have a plan in the budget to get us water then?
I would say at this point that this is going to be a big issue. It's something we're working on. There's really too many unknowns at this point in terms of what's going to happen, how much CFS is going to come down, what the impact will be, water rights. I mean, this is something that's starting to consume a lot of our time, but really the big issue right now and the struggle that most of us are facing, including the entities who are impacted, is really knowing what the project's going to be and what's going to come downstream. And at this point, the Army Corps of Engineers has been unable to really give us any information. So in terms of secondary water sources and working with Salem and that's going to be a big issue, but even short-term finding secondary water sources wouldn't necessarily solve that problem. But it's going to be a big issue, and it's involving a lot of stakeholders, and And again, we're spending a lot of time on that. But at this point, there's too much speculation for us to even say what can or can't be done.
We have agreements, and this will be the last I speak of it, and I guess Keith can address it, but we have agreements in place already with Salem, and we know what we'd be paying. So it's no more, no less than we're paying now when we get on their water supply. So we have that in place. Whether or not they can feed it or not, that's a different story, and we don't know.
Yeah, and I guess that's my concern of not seeing this in the budget, because Salem has already talked about how they're not even sure they can furnish enough water for their own citizens.
Exactly.
Quality water.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my question is, where do we get water if we don't have a budget to get water if we need it?
Well, that's one of the reasons I'm going to a meeting tomorrow all day to talk about these kind of things. I don't have the answer for you. I wish I could. And I think if you talk to anybody up the river, up the canyon, they're not going to have an answer for you right now either.
Yeah, I understand that.
The real issue at this point is none of the downstream stakeholders know what's happening, what's going on. The Army Corps of Engineers was not anticipating or expecting any downstream issues. It's why the congressional delegation and why lots of other conversations are happening right now. The last meeting we went to, they had basically said, gosh, this is good that we finally learned something about this. They had looked at data from the 1950s and assumed that was still accurate. We are having conversations with Marion County, with Salem, with all of these entities, and all of us are concerned. And I think there's a much bigger issue, and without getting into a whole lot of details, there might be much more at play in terms of those entities working together to make sure that all of us are taken care of and satisfied. And at this point, the real issue is the Army Corps of Engineers hasn't had any real issues or concerns. It doesn't seem to, as of yet, be looking to address that. And so there is just a lot of unknowns, and this has come pretty quickly. But in terms of secondary water sources, there has been efforts in the past for the city to find secondary wells. Those efforts would be unsuccessful. If we were able to find water elsewhere, it would probably be something that would require a pretty significant investment to do that. And so I understand the concern, but at this point, anything would just be a wild guess. It is a disturbing and troubling situation, and if the plans go forward, I think the city will need, and a lot of entities will need to look at how we can best address that. And we're not the only one in this situation, and so we'll work to try to solve that. But it is an important one. But I understand your concern, but at this point we have no idea what we could or couldn't put in the budget.
I guess for me, it's just, as a citizen on the budget committee, I'm concerned about us not including like a Plan B budget, or I guess how do we approve a water fund budget when we know that this is such a serious thing and we don't have anything in here that is looking at the worst case scenario?
I don't think you want to go there.
But we don't want to go there, but at the same time,
there's no way to budget, to be honest, for a worst-case scenario. What you may be able to do, if you had any information, from what I'm hearing, though, there is no information, so you really can't budget for something you have no idea what there is. So what we do have is a contingency, which allows for some expenditure of money, some change in plan should there need to be some additional money spent. But the reality is you can't buy water rights unless there's somebody selling those. That would be your way to get source. The infrastructure that's in place is able to deliver whatever it's able to deliver. If there's no water available, you would end up having, throughout this entire region, seeing the governor take action to ultimately reduce the amount of water that's being allocated to all the different communities, And the money that is ultimately being spent would likely be less than what's budgeted at this point. So this is the budget that I think is in place for what is likely to take place and what staff needs the ability in order to run the system. The worst-case scenario, they don't know what that worst case is, and it's pretty difficult, if not impossible, to figure out what that might look like. It'd be the equivalent of asking a school board to budget for what happens if the state doesn't have any money and chooses not to fund you. You wouldn't get anywhere.
I would disagree with that because we do know that this is a serious threat at this point, but it's not quite the same analogy.
I guess the question...
I agree. Money is not the answer with the money, with the water rights stuff. It's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. We could put $2 million in our budget and say, okay, we're going to deal with this, and that's still not the issue. Do we currently pay Salem for water?
No, the Salem is a backup system that we can use, and
Yeah.
they are our backup
Okay.
things. I mean, at
Yeah.
real issue here, and I think what we need to be really focusing on is the stakeholders that be impacted in getting together, and I guess making sure that this project to save fish doesn't cause us to not have water for our residents. And I think that's what Salem's dealing with, and Idana and Kate's, and all the other, I mean, I think there's about 25 or 30 downstream stakeholders at this point. And that's, I think, what we're trying to do, and in the conversations we're trying to have, in the congressional efforts that are being made right now to make sure that the water that we need downstream is there, and the CFS are there, and Lance could talk about this, but the turbidity and the quality of the water and the water temperature, which could cause other things such as algae bloom. So, I mean, the worst case scenario would be they would build this and all downstream wouldn't have water. That's a much bigger issue than just something we can solve in our budget.
And a very unlikely happening, I believe.
Councilor Cronquist.
Madam Chair, the Sandy Am Water Control District happens to be my neighbor in adjacency. Brent, and I've given these to staff, and the mayor has a list of allocated water rights and where the city stands with the city water rights versus other water rights. As an example, my property was manufacturing and has 625 acre-feet of grandfathered water rights. I mean, it's a matter of, in an immediate case scenario, the water could be out there, but if it's all gone, then it doesn't matter.
Thank you.
And it doesn't matter what money we throw at it, it's because these things go back to the 1880s.
Thank you.
I'll get you copies of those.
Oh, I don't need them, but thank you. Any other questions on the sewer fund? Or sorry, the water fund? We're on to the sewer fund.
Going with that. All right, let's move on to the sewer fund. All right, staffing. Staffing remains unchanged currently, so we'll go to sewer fund accomplishments. We treated 452 million gallons of sewage this last year. That's through April. Cleaned and televised 4.5 miles of sewer line. Made 58 repairs on the sewer lines to reduce I&I into the system.
You're putting that up on YouTube?
No, I didn't do that. The strategic issues. Ensure funding is sustainable. Funding for capital improvement projects. Reduce inflow I&I, which is what I just spoke about, the repairs in the line. Long-term, convert Gardner lift station into a gravity sewer line so we can reduce costs for operations and improve that line, upsize it. Continue to work with the sewer master plan priorities. Challenges and opportunities. Continue I&I reduction. Maintain sludge dryer to provide Class A biosolids. Oh, golly, sorry. I should give this to you, Keith. There we go. Build redundancy into the treatment system and continue building our relationship with Sublimity. We just met with them about a month ago, city manager, the mayor, and myself, trying to reestablish that relationship. We have an agreement with them that since we treat their sewer, they're supposed to contribute to capital projects at the treatment plant as well as the Mill Creek pump station, and those are the kind of things that we were talking about. We need to continue with that relationship. Long-term find land for the disposal of our Class A materials. As of now, we don't have any place to take our Class A or Class B material because the farmers have all said, we've had enough. So we need to find some land so we can start disposing that material. It's part of our master plan that we do go out and obtain property for that. So that's something that we're going to have to start looking into in the future.
104 acres of park.
Continue ways to try to reduce costs at the treatment plant. Changes. Natural gas expenditure decreased up to 50%. Electricity up by 17%. System improvement costs were moved to 2018-19 for the construction of a 24-inch force main down Jetters Way. Form just south of Ida Street to the treatment plant. This is a sewer master plan project. We had this in the sewer fund for last year. We did not go out to, we did not build that. I'm working with another group to try to get an easement for us to build that line. We weren't able to get that easement. And so we're working on that currently, and we're hoping to build that line in August.
Stands in the way of easement.
Performance measures. We operate and maintain 33 miles of sewer line, four sanitary sewer lift stations, and a level 3 wastewater treatment plant. Capital fund. Plant improvements, $165,000. We need to replace the flume down there now. That measures the flow coming into our treatment plant. That is a master plan project as well. So that'll be coming out of our SDC funds. The 24-inch force main project is what I just briefly spoke about earlier. That has been designed. It's ready to go. We've got contract documents ready to go. I just need to get an easement. I'm looking into building that this summer, August, September. We're working with NORPAC on that since we have an easement from NORPAC. I want to wait till their crops are out of the way, and they have said August, September is the time to build. So that's what we're going to try to shoot for. And purchase of a service truck, 80% of that will come out of the sewer fund. That concludes the sewer fund. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Counselor Cronquist.
This one, personnel, this one in Andy, and not necessarily clear that it's UAL. In 15-16, the FTEs are 7.8 down to 5.8 currently. 15-16, it was 605, 571, 533. Last year it was only 133, and this year it's up to 683. That's page 84. Why the $400,000 change from 17-18 budget to estimated, and then as to why the radical $400,000 swings?
Good question, and it's a formula error. So there's another $300,000 worth of salaries in the current year estimate. Mm-hmm. The budget number for the UAL is $141,700, so that's where the vast majority. But the budgeted amount for salaries in the current year is $322. That number is projected to be $348 next year. And then your benefit costs, going up for those 5.8. The reduction from FTE counts, most of that was, if I recall correctly, was administrative staffing and reallocating those.
There was an unfilled operator or something too.
Right. Yeah.
Then the other question is materials outlay services jumps from 887 to $1,241,000. That's not a capital cost, that's just materials and services. And that's not the truck, because I believe the truck is a capital cost.
Yeah, again, these are all identified, and Lance can speak to the need for them, but there's three primary drivers. There's plant operating expense that is going up approximately $45K, 177 to 222. System operating expense, 180 to 322.
Why did it double?
It's up 152K is the budget change, and Lance can speak to that. And then the sludge disposal is up from 100 to 155. So those those three line items are the ones that are driving that increase.
So, and you're going to have to repeat those because I don't have that
Sure.
information with me.
The system plan operating cost
Okay.
from 178 budget to 222. The current year estimate on that is 210. And the system operating expense, budget of 180 with up to 322, and that's a contract OT clean and repair lines is a note
yeah,
there.
so-
And then Mill Creek, I'm sorry, missed that one, that's from 69 to 110, which
Yep.
is a new biotox oxide tank. And then sludge disposal from 100 to 155.
So I'll start from the very top and I'll do what I have here. I don't think I brought the information regarding what you are completely looking for, but the system operating, or the system operating expense, meaning the sewer lines in our streets. We have a permit with DEQ, it's called a TMDL report, all right? Part of that TMDL permit, we're required to clean 7 miles of our sewer lines and 7 miles of our sanitary sewer lines, 4 miles of our storm line. We put a contract out to bid last year for this service, and it came back at $183,000 annually. We were only paying like $65,000 a year to do it, because we weren't doing that. We weren't meeting our permit. So when I took that out to bid, I took it out to bid to meet our permit. Because if we don't get our permit, meet our permit, it doesn't matter what we're spending, we're going to get fined that amount anyway. So that's what that increase is for system operating. I think Andy spoke to the Mill Creek. We had to put in a biox tank. We used to go out to contract with that. The folks that supplied that no longer do it. So we had the option of putting a bigger tank in and doing it ourselves and getting that biox material ourselves, or not do it at all, that we need that biox for the amount of flow that we come into Mill Creek. So that is what that increase is now. It's like $60,000, I believe it is.
Andy, isn't that a capital expense versus an
It's a maintenance expense. We already have one.
Yeah, I mean, is it going to materially extend the useful life of the
I don't know, I have no
And-
idea, he's the expert.
Yeah, and the way we've discussed it, I'm comfortable with it being maintenance. I mean, it could be capital, it could be either one. If it's, either way, it's, an ongoing cost, or I should say, a cost that sounded to me more like it's going to be something that's,
And every once in a while thing we need to do.
Well, we can
Counselor-
fill the biox tank up, but to replace, the one we had was broken. It was cracked. We were leaking it. We had to replace it. So this is the cost to replace it with the new pump and to fill that biox into that tank, and that's going to be, the replacement of the biox itself will be something that's ongoing. We never used to do it until like 3 years ago. We found from DEQ that we need to do this, so that's what the expense is.
Counselor Glidewell.
Lance,
Yes.
on the previous slide, you had a little star at the bottom, and it said, includes contributions from Sublimity.
Yes.
Are they currently giving us money, or is that wishful thinking?
Well, we have a,
Always have.
We have a contract with Sublimity, and that's part of what the conversation was. And they have reached out, and we have notified them about the project and notified them about the costs.
But we have not, in the past, done any capital improvement to find out if they actually are willing to pay for it, or?
well,
No, I wouldn't say that. This is one of the projects that's out there that qualifies for this, and that's one of the conversations we had
Okay.
about.
Do they have to agree on the project in order to
This is-
cooperate and pay for it?
This is part of the contract agreement projects that would fall under that agreement based off of the master plan, if I remember exactly how it works.
my recollection was there was no requirement for them to approve. It was like, if they're in the, the master plan and they're set up, this is what the contribution should be. The one sticking point that I know Keith and Lance are talking to them about is it speaks to the issuance of debt. so that they would be making their proportionate contractual payment for debt. Well, in this budget, we're not showing the use of debt, there's existing resources, and so
Right.
there's a conversation there, are they going to say, well, you didn't issue any debt, we're not going to pay? So before committing to the project and before doing all those things, if you have to borrow, including borrowing from yourself and paying yourself back, if that's the game you need to play,
Okay.
we'll see where.
That's why I was wondering if there was a chance that that wouldn't happen, and then the whole thing would be kind of off the table, or we'd have to look elsewhere for the funding for that. Okay.
Do you have a question?
Well, you answered most of the stuff about the discrepancy, but there is one that's the double.
Which one?
Which one doubled?
I don't have those numbers in
yeah,
front of me.
yeah,
like you
okay.
folks
Go back
do,
and
so
pull that up.
I'm
It's
scrambling.
went
The
from
system operating, is that the one?
the system operating.
He's got
The cleaning thing.
Okay.
I think system operating, wasn't that the one that was the 7 miles and 4 miles?
Yeah, I mean, that, again,
Okay,
the
that-
system operating is
was
because
the one that
I'm
doubled?
required to clean so many
Okay.
lines annually. We never did it in the past.
All right, I thought that was for the 45 one.
We could be fined for
Yeah.
that, so.
And are these things that you're like finding out as you've come into this role for 4 years?
Yes,
That you're kind
absolutely.
of cleaning up the stuff that was going
There's a lot of
on
those
prior?
cleaning up issues, right.
Okay.
And this is one of those.
Counselor Cronquist?
Lance, as I recall, I'm looking for it, I can't see it online, and I didn't bring a printed copy, and I'm sorry. Didn't we spend $1 million on a sludge, Class A biosolids dryer last year?
No,
Do we budget it, or?
no, I think what you looked at, I recall that conversation specifically, is you were looking at the 5-year capital improvement.
So that's a capital improvement plan for
Yeah.
5 years, okay, that's fine.
And so we have not, although it might be something we may have to discuss here in the future, but I've moved that off the list of capital improvements because there are other things that need to get taken care of first.
That's fine, I
We
just,
did spend a lot of money on a turbine that was junk. The
We
previous
really
one.
didn't spend any money at all in the treatment plant this last year.
Okay.
I think Andy can probably talk to that, but I have not spent anything down at the wastewater treatment plant or the sewer out in the streets other than maintenance of those lines I thought.
Yeah, I think, you're showing a year-end estimate of $50K
Yeah.
total for.
How much did I have projected? 800 or something like that?
The budget was $765.
Yeah,
That was the first.
I've spent 50,000 of that, so. We haven't really spent any money in the sewer fund this last year.
And don't clean any sewer lines in front of my house and break my connection
No, ma'am,
that I
I
have
won't
to
do
pay
that.
for.
Question on the staffing numbers.
Somebody drive over all those cars parked out there.
The 2017, 2018 doesn't seem to calculate out at the bottom for total FTEs.
All right, let me see here.
Is it off?
Is it?
Should be 6.8.
when did we not fill the 4.5, Lance?
Well, I'm looking here.
The waste treatment.
It says 5.8. It adds up to 5.8 on mine.
Should be 3.5 last year,
Yeah, there should be, I think it's a calculation on the formula.
Oh,
To
okay.
work on your,
because last year's one.
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Because we go
that
4, 5,
that should have been
6,
3.5
0.8.
last year. It's 5.8. It has remained unchanged for the last year.
Okay.
Sorry.
We're all human. Does anyone else have any questions about the sewer fund? I hear none.
Taste of the water.
Any more? Okay. Stormwater. Excuse me. Pardon me, I gotta get you back to this. Staffing, proposed unchanged, we have 1/2 personnel there. He's a funny guy, comes up to about your waist. But anyway, we'll go on to the next slide here. Stormwater fund accomplishments. Design of the regional detention facility. We're designing that currently. Probably go out to bid in the next 2 weeks for that. And we'll be constructing it over the summer. We've cleaned 4 miles of storm lines, 27 manholes, 194 catch basins. Strategic issues, finished design regional detention facility. Community education, we continue to do that in the summertime, and going to schools and talk about stormwater quality and detention issues. Work to meet our memo of understanding commitments with the Sandy Am Water Control District. That's an ongoing process. One of the projects that we're working on currently is the regional detention facility. That is really part of that memo of understanding. Long-term upgrade and preserve the stormwater infrastructure. One of the things I'd like to point out is that I think Andy touched on it a little bit earlier. When you're driving down the streets, you see how degraded our streets are, okay? That's because you can see them, you're rolling over them. But I got to tell you, our stormwater system is in worse shape than our streets. We have literally some streets in this community, several back to back, that have zero storm system in them. That's why our neighbors get flooded. We have a very minimal stormwater fund, very minimal charge for it, but if we want to bring our stormwater up to where I think we want it, we're going to have to invest more in that. Some of the problems that I'm running into with this increased street fund is that I'm looking for streets to pave and reconstruct. I go over to Old Town, 4th Avenue, prime example. Love to redo 4th Avenue. Problem is, there's no storm system in it. Absolutely none. I can't do it. I can't go and redo a street and then I have more water running off the street and there's nowhere for it to go. So that gets scratched off the list, even though that might be a high priority for the streets. We need to start investing more in our stormwater system. That's my take. It's something for you guys to decide on as a council in the future, but that's something that we really need to start upgrading. It's going to limit the amount of street projects that I can do, and that's just the way that goes. Opportunities, challenges and opportunities. Continue to work with the development community to promote city stormwater design standards, maintain existing stormwater infrastructure, use best management practices, long-term provide stormwater management in an efficient, cost-effective manner. Work with community partners to find solutions to our stormwater issues. Stormwater fund changes, none from last year. Oh, sorry. Performance measures, clean, maintain all storm sewer collection systems, storm lines, culverts, ditches, etc., etc. Stormwater fund, capital, pollution control manhole, $35,000. That again is in our memo of understanding with the Sandy Am Water Control District, but something that I found when I started here is that something that really doesn't take place in most of the communities that I've ever worked as a consultant, and that's dumping our street stormwater right into Salem ditch or any body of water without first going through a pollution control manhole. The purpose of a pollution control manhole is to take the grit that's in the street, the oils and the hydrocarbons, and it washes through a pollution control manhole, and they get stuck with the grit and the rocks and the pebbles and things, and they sink to the bottom of this pollution control manhole, most of them. And then the water goes out, and it's 75-80% clean sometimes. We don't have that. We've got 3 or 4 of them in our community now that we installed in the last 3 years. But other than that, we're just flushing whatever's in the street right now right into the creek and down it. So we've got this thing called the Clean Water Act. I'm not sure we're meeting that, but I think with the memo of understanding, we're working towards that. So that's why we're trying to put pollution control manholes wherever we can. I'm installing one. As part of the memo of understanding, they've asked for 5 of them. I think I put in 4 and another couple of catch basins, but not all of them are in the locations that they wanted. Anytime I've been doing a street project, like for example, we did Marion Street, I installed one down on Marion Street where a lot of stormwater comes down from the upper basin and dumps right into the ditch. So we spent the extra $10,000 and put one in there just because we should. It's something we should be doing. And that's something we should be investing in the future. Again, that's one of those things I found when I started. And that's all for stormwater. Does anybody have any questions?
Counselor Glidewell does.
Lance, can you tell me, I don't know if you can, but can you tell me how much it costs? You know how you can kind of tell how much it costs to resurface a road or to slurry it or to do it, to, let's just take Fourth Avenue, to actually put in a stormwater system in there, either by the block or by the half mile or what it is? What about, can you ballpark what we're looking at?
I would just say,
I mean,
roughly,
are we talking about a few $100,000, or are we talking about $1 million?
I'd say for like a 400-foot block, let's just average city block, 400 feet, it's about $100 a foot for the storm pipe. Catch basins, 2,000 apiece, let's put 4 of them in, there's 8,000. You know, 100 times 400, we got 400 grand there, so.
Okay,
$500,000 in this block.
What I'm looking into now is I'm looking into trying to put more street side swales, building those into our street system themselves. And that way we don't need all the underground infrastructure that just, where we can, we perk it into the ground. Something I'm looking at trying to do with our new standards that'll be coming out this summer, trying to incorporate that. We have a lot of issues regarding stormwater, and we're trying to find ways to take care of them.
Counselor Conquest.
In the, back in the water, we looked at the increase in materials and services, and part of that was 4 miles of stormwater cleaning, which is great and fine. But if you look at the stormwater fund, we have basically a doubling in price, a $35,955 increase in materials and services for stormwater as well, from $46,445 to $82,400, which is $36,000 difference.
That's in the stormwater?
That's in stormwater.
What line item are you looking at?
Page 89, materials and services.
It's actually only a $11,000 jump from the estimated, what we budgeted last year.
Yeah, I think you might be looking at the estimate, not the estimate for the year, and not the.
Yeah.
I look at the budget and the estimate, it varies from, the thing that's the anomaly of this line, it goes from 171 to 51 to 71 to 46 to 82. What stuck out is why the wild variance, and then how come our, why the wild variance?
Yeah, if I could, the significant number within your 171 number is a lawsuit that ran up about $100,000 worth of legal bills. The amount in the current year estimate, you've got $25,000 that is not being spent on system maintenance and operation expense in the current year. In other words, he's coming in below budget, but as he's explained, he's anticipating to be spending the current year budget plus a little bit more in the upcoming year.
I have a question that I'm not even sure if it's in the right area yet, because all of these things run together when it comes to water for me. The 375, is that how much it, 375,000, no, $725,000 item on page 4 that was in Keith's letter.
Page 4?
Yeah, it's with the MOU with Santiam Water Control District that you guys want to increase, increase fees for citizens to cover this $725,000.
Okay. What is your question, ma'am?
I'm just waiting for that to be discussed, and when does that get discussed?
Right after the SDC funds.
Wonderful.
Okay, construction fund? All right.
Great.
We have been referring to it all night. It's the regional detention facility. That is what I've been talking about that, but we'll address it then.
Great. Thanks. Any?
I have a
Councilor
quick
Mullen?
question. This might be more for you, Keith, and maybe this is more of a question for offline, but as far as the effectiveness measures that I've been seeing tonight, and this is, I appreciate everything Lance does and the team does, but when I see the effectiveness measures, I don't know what that means with regards to, do we baseline anything? Do we have key performance actual metrics against last year's? So when I see, 4.5 miles of something done this year, what's the standard for a city of this size to help us measure year after year what our performance measures are.
I think one of the things that we are working on enhancing is becoming more transparent on some of those benchmarks and answering more of those questions and giving a frame of reference. And, as we've been working on these performance measures, I think that's, when we talk about continuing to enhance the budget and explain, that's some of the areas we're looking to get to. So it's a number that has some sort of meaning instead of just a random number that has no so it is something, no comparable or no frame of reference, right? So it is something that I think we're continuing to work on and try to improve, and I know staff is becoming more engaged in trying to do that as well, so that these numbers give something that's a little more meaningful.
And I also think that would help if there's a need for an increase in FTEs, where you say, our benchmark for a city of our size is this. We've been exceeding that for several years, and we need more staff to cover that. I mean, it helps support.
No, I mean, that's absolutely what this should get to, right? To help explain where your resources are going and why they're going there, and if change needs to be made, why, and that's the ultimate goal of where we're trying to get to.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions regarding the Stormwater Fund? I hear none.
All right, moving on. SDC funds.
We're doing Public Works admin budget first or not?
Oh, did I miss that? I'm sorry.
We should have, the next one should be Public Works admin budget, shouldn't it? Before we do SDC?
It's SDCs, and then Public Work Admin is coming up after that, right after this.
So we're doing SDCs first? That's fine.
SDCs right now. Construction Fund and then Public Works Administration.
All right, SDC funds, this is kind of a compilation of all of them. We're going to be increasing roughly 3%. I think Andy spoke to that a little bit yesterday, and that's based on the engineering news record of 3%. We'll be increasing our fees by 3%, our SDC fees that we charge people that come in and do projects. Revenues expected to be greater due to increased development. We have quite a bit of development in the pipeline. There are more and more people coming in every day wanting to do development, so that's a good thing for our funds. Transfer to operating funds, $100,000 for the detention facility, $155,000 for parks, $25,000 would be for Mill Creek master plans, $130,000 for the parkland, which we're paying for. Basically the Putney property, we're paying ourselves back when we purchased that, so that's going to be coming out of the Parks SDC. Stormwater construction funds, Parkland, Stormwater construction fund, I guess that's where you're supposed to see that, and we'll talk about that. Streets, $100,000 for the transportation system plan, $119,000 for Kendall Way project. It will happen this next year. Those are SDCs, those are attributed to, it's a collector, Kendall Way is a collector street, it's an SDC project, creditable, so we can pull money out of the SDCs to build that portion of them. The sewer, $528,000, force main down Jetter's Way, that's 100% SDC creditable, so we'll be paying that with SDC funds. And the water, the shaft road water line, the 16-inch water line that I've been discussing, that is also SDC creditable, so we'll be paying for that with our SDC funds, or a portion of their SDC funds. Any questions? Yes?
Councilor Gridwell. Go ahead.
Yeah, how do our SDC funds compare, when we do it 3%, how will it compare to other cities near us, such as like Monmouth and Dallas and Independence?
I don't have that answer for you.
You don't have that?
I do. We're right in line with, for those of you who don't know, we're looking at a lot of projects, and I'm Monmouth. Our SDCs are neither in or out of line.
I think, as always, they're right in the mid. I mean, that's what they've been traditionally for years. I believe every city that I'm aware of that works on these projects, they raise it by the same index, 3%. They're not going to change that much.
Okay.
Unless council comes in and says, hey, we need to raise more money to do a project, let's raise them 5%. you know.
And I know Sublimity is looking to actually try to mirror ours, SDCs, but in terms of just overall scope, when we did that analysis a few years ago, we were right there, pretty much in line with just about all the comparable cities.
Yeah, with our peer group, Lebanon, Independence, Dallas, we're right in the middle.
How much freedom do you have to determine whether a project is SDC fundable?
Most of the time, our master plans, and for these 3 projects that we have here, 2 of them anyway, the streets and the sewer, right in our master plan tells you what this project is, because these are master plan projects, and in there they tell you what kind of percentage can you pull out of the total project amount to be paid for by SDCs. So that's what we're using.
Who determines that number?
When the consultants to prepare this master plan for us, they do.
Okay.
And so I just pull that 18 or 40% right out of there.
So it's not you wagging it, it's somebody else who's doing that. Okay.
Counselor Cronquist, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman, Chairperson. Anyway, street SDC funds, and forgive my ignorance, Andy, but generally a contingency fund in our budgets is the carryover from the date of budget adoption until the taxes become due, which is why we have a contingency in the budgets. But why do we have a contingency in a SDC for streets? We have a $400,000, we had a $441,000 contingency fund on SDCs. I mean, SDCs are collected and distributed to do things.
Right.
Why do we have money sitting there which could do 4th Avenue with biofilter swales for the whole thing?
Couldn't do the 4th Avenue.
Yeah, good question. If that project was a qualified SDC project, I think the SDC projects are capacity increasing type projects, so it wouldn't be necessarily reconstruction of an existing street or overlay. It would be an expansion or something that was adding capacity to a street. But the reason there's contingency as opposed to unappropriated is, again, to give the council the flexibility to take these dollars and to move them should they need to. So, for example, in Kindle Way, if the cost of Kindle Way in the street fund ends up being more than what is currently budgeted, the contingency allows you to make a budget adjustment to move some dollars over rather than require bringing back this whole group in order to make it an adjustment to do a project.
But we have a 729.69, and of which 451, more than half of that is contingency?
And again,
that's a large insurance, Paul. That's 100.
There's no insurance about this, Counselor. What's going on is you have money and you have to appropriate it somewhere. So if you don't have a project, which Public Works didn't bring forward a project that it was SDC qualified, you can't just go spend it. And it needs to go to some appropriation. The appropriation categories that would be appropriate here would be contingency or unappropriated. And rather than unappropriate it and freeze it, we have provided you, the council, the most flexibility we can to make adjustments down the road. The money will only be spent as you as a governing body, choose to spend that money. And, these SDCs are pretty darn restricted, right?
Absolutely.
So it's going to go to projects that are qualified when they're ready to go. And oftentimes what you see happening is dollars for big projects like this, extending a road. What's the cost of paving a half a mile of road? It's more than the $500,000 that you're paying for stormwater. You're saving those dollars up to ultimately contribute to other projects.
Councilor Gable.
So does Kindle Way qualify for this because you're adding a lane
Yeah,
to
no,
it?
it's a collector road, and most of the collector roads in the transportation system plan are SDC credible. It's not 100%. but it's
It's not that we're if we were to make 4th Avenue a 4-lane road, now it would qualify for an SDC fund?
A portion of it would be.
If we were to make it a 4-lane road, it'd be an arterial, it'd probably be 100% credible. Right?
Okay, got it.
How do we make 4th Avenue?
Really exciting.
So we can turn Water Avenue into a racetrack?
I like that idea.
I do too. Let's do a quarter-mile oval.
Are there any other questions on the SDC funds? I don't hear any.
All right. Moving
all of
on.
our SDC funds?
Yeah, we highlighted the ones that.
The construction fund.
What page is
Oh,
that on?
there's a water SDC fund.
Page 101 is the Stormwater Construction Fund.
I think we cleared all of the SDCs in one fell swoop.
Yes.
Oh, we did, okay, I had one question then.
Stormwater, park, streets, sewer, and water.
On the water SDC, sorry about that, I was thinking we'd go into the next SDC. Page 81, we're up 195% in SDCs, is what summary says.
On water?
Water SDCs. We received 195 more in SDCs than what we received in the previous year.
That could very well be. But it sounds a bit much.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that number, but.
It says water SDC fund right here.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 81, highlights, water SDC fund.
Maybe it was my error.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. It's a large number.
And where did we see that, Mark? I'm sorry.
Right here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, the number there came from the 15-16 year, which was 31,000. It's up to 90-some thousand.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
I mean, that would be from.
I'm not quite sure why I'm comparing it to 2015-16.
It's fine. It just is an anomaly. It
is an anomaly.
These are what stick out as I go through these.
Yeah, I mean, budgetarily, these, from a budget standpoint, we've budgeted fairly conservative, that, got the numbers from planning in terms of how many equivalent dwelling units were expected.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an anomaly, and the reason the anomaly mattered is are we that far off on all of our SDCs, or is it just a budgetary or a math error? And it's a math error, that's fine. It's a wrong year error.
It just shouldn't be comparing that to.
Yeah, I
We
think
comped the
probably
wrong year.
I think the post that Lance did, and as I read through it, it was like, okay, that it's showing that activity relative to 15-16 has gone up significantly. So I think that's the nature of what that is. If you look at 15-16 actual and the amount in 17-18 estimate, and then the number that we're projecting next year, which is similar to the current year, it's three times as much.
Which looking at future trends, I see that across the board in the SDCs as we build up, because Sublimity is built out, so is Almsville.
Yeah, and that could change, and again, this whole thing of looking at 5 years is something the organization is just getting into and starting to, look at a little bit more seriously, and, same with the council and so forth, and, it takes a little bit of time to get all these things in, kicking in. You've got master plans that, projected what kind of growth?
Well, the original was 3%.
Yeah, the growth number that I'm showing, population-wise, is still 1/3%, and until you see things actually happening, we're going to be a little conservative on what those numbers are, right?
Well, that's why this one stuck. That's why 195% stuck out. It's because it's.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, any more questions on the SDCs? All right, officially moving on.
Moving on.
Stormwater Construction Fund.
All right, construction fund. The construction fund. The entirety of this fund is for the Lambert Place, not Lambert Place, the Lambert Regional Detention Facility. All right, this facility was really brought about by the memo of understanding that the city council signed with the Santiam Water Control District several years ago. In that memo of understanding, they asked us to fix our stormwater system because it's dumping right into their ditches that they irrigate their crops with. They brought a $32 million or a $29 million lawsuit against the city. And this memo of understanding was a result of that lawsuit. Sides came together and they came up with this memo of understanding. In the memo of understanding, it has criteria that we need to follow and they need to follow. One of the criteria is that we fix our stormwater system. They have been pushing the city since I've been here and before that, to build a detention facility to remove water going to the Salem ditch. The Salem ditch does not have the capacity they claim for our stormwater, as well as the water they pull off of the North Santiam River. There are choke points downstream, down along Golf Club Road, that flood farmers' fields, and they don't want the stormwater there anymore. So in an effort to eliminate that, one of our state senators went and obtained $1.5 million of lottery fund dollars to fix some of these issues, okay? And that's this construction fund. We've got 380, I think that number is a little bit low, but about $380,000 left of that 1.5 million. That we've used that for purchasing 38 acres of land. We've used that for design engineers, geotechnical engineers, surveyors, landscape architects, just about every type of engineer you can think of to design this facility. So right now we're down to about $380,000. It's about design, 99% designed. The contract documents are ready. We'll probably be going out to bid in the next 2 weeks. Our engineers estimates that to be about a $1.7 million project. There are ways for us to try to reduce that amount, but we've got to find partners to help us do that. So this construction fund, this is kind of a list of what we're looking at, how we're going to be paying for that. We've got about a $380,000, I think, fund balance there. It doesn't change it that much. We've got $180,000 of developer contributions. That is something that I've been working on since we started this project. We have a developer that's going to be developing 50 lots just south of this detention facility. I am working a deal with them to let them use our facility for their water quality detention. We have plenty of room, and in exchange for money that would cost them to build it on their own subdivision site. So basically, they don't lose two lots to build on, and they're going to use our facility, but they're going to pay us what it would cost them to build that facility on their subdivision. So we're going to get money from them. We're also going to try to sell some of the fill material that we've got to excavate from this detention facility, and we're going to put it on their subdivision. They need to raise their subdivision up. I said, I got plenty of fill for you. How about if we move it over there for a price? So that's that's something else that I'm working on to try to get a number for that. And of that, I think that $180,000, I believe that's what that represents. Is that correct, Andy?
Right.
All right.
Well, not exactly. In fact, want to apologize. This particular slide is something let's make like you never saw it. It's last year's slide. Okay, so
it's the one I'm
maybe we
working on.
go through and look at page 102 of your budget. Can walk you through the numbers part of this, and then Lance can answer the questions related to the project itself and so forth. But on page 102, you're seeing a carryover of about $70,000 from the current year, and what's driving that transfer or driving that is bringing over about $130,000 worth of money from the general fund and stormwater SDC funds. This coming year, the proposed budget, Lance is looking at spending upwards of $1,450,000 to build this regional facility. And he's explained, I think, the components of that and what he's attempting to do to help maybe bring that cost down. There's $381,000 remaining on the earmark from the state of Oregon. We are looking at approximately $50,000 in developer contributions. That number could be more, could be less. We have $280,000 shown as transfers from other funds. So Stormwater SDC is bringing in $100,000. The Park SDC is bringing in $130,000. We talked about that a little earlier. That represents 1/2 of the land cost that's been allocated off this project from, excuse me, I got a fly flying in my face. 260,000 is the allocation that's been given to the land that was purchased for this facility that can be reused as a park facility. So there's money coming from the general fund, 130, and 130 coming from parks SDCs to offset that $260,000 cost. And the general's coming in 2 years, 80 this current year and 50 in next year. And then to balance this all out, because there's really no other place within the budget other than going to the general fund and bringing dollars over, or to your stormwater fund that doesn't have any money. I mean, those are the choices, is, either scale this project back, which I think, Lance can, cover that, or issue debt of up to $725,000 in order to complete the project, phase one, and there'll be future phases that need to be dealt with down the road. And then there's a few, $16,000 left in contingency.
Andy, without causing a problem, this is going to be Kindle Way going out there, right? Can we use some of the $450,000 spare money in the streets SDC for the Kindle Way improvements or to help offset the costs?
Yeah, the Kindle Way money that was being moved from Kindle Way street SDCs was 19% of the cost associated with Kindle Way street improvements. We can't use street SDCs to pay for stormwater or for water.
What I mean, if there are parking lots and for curbs and sidewalks?
There's not going to be any of that.
That's part of the...
That's part of the park part.
Right.
Well, even if it was part of the park, you've got to be real careful when you're spending SDC dollars that they're for
That's what I was
identified
asking.
projects in the plan that were used to create what the SDC amount should be, right? In these, there's nothing in here that would be qualified for a street SDC.
Because somebody's going to ask us if you're looking for $725 in bonded indebtedness for this a couple times over, why aren't we using the money we have in this pot?
Because
we can't, is the answer.
Right.
Thank you.
I have a question. When does it say in the MOU that we have to have this done by to put this stormwater detention center
I
in?
don't have the MOU with me, but there were years, I think we're behind like 2 or 3 years for everything. I mean, there are things that were supposed to be done 3 or 4 years ago that we still have not done.
And so how long have you known that this has needed to be done?
Since about the 3rd week that I started.
Okay, so about 4 years. You've known that this needs to be done.
Yeah.
And in what ways in the last 3 years has your department tried to reduce costs in order to plan for this?
I'm going to go over this brief conversation with you so you try to understand the complexity of any kind of stormwater issue in the city of Stayton. We have high groundwater here. Sometimes it's to the surface. You can't build a detention facility with water that's high. We explored land all around Stayton for the last 3 years. And you got to have land that's available to sell, to buy. We have not found any. We explored site up on Gulf Club Road and Shaft Road, too high groundwater, doesn't work. That's one of the reasons we can't sell it. The owner can't sell it, and it went to auction. High groundwater. The Lambert Place, it's very minimal, high groundwater. That's why it has to be so big, so we can detain enough water that it pulls it out of the Salem ditch. For the last 3 years, we've been looking for land and performing feasibility studies on all the land that we looked at. This site came at the right price, at the right time, that has the right characteristics that we were able to do something with. And that's why it's taken 3 years.
This has been an ongoing project, and it's been something in terms of looking, since I basically started on the council, looking for suitable land and working with the council and different developers to try to find, and this has been a long and ongoing process. And CNM Waterford District is aware of this, and we have been working with them. They helped us. They were part of the appropriations from the state in terms of helping with some of the cost of this, but obviously the cost is pretty extreme. But this has been an ongoing process, and acquiring this land was about a 2-year process in and of itself.
I don't feel like that answers my question, though, because I feel like if you've known for 3 years that you're going to need a stormwater detention facility and you know that it has a large price on it, why is this being thrown into a 1-year budget to cover the entire thing when you had 3 years you could have spread it out?
We have not had a stormwater fee for 3 years. We just passed a stormwater fee in this community 3 years ago. Before that, we had nothing, $0.
The stormwater fee
We bought
was...
the land out of a different budget.
Right, the stormwater
Yeah,
fee
that
was, the stormwater fee you're
it's been
referring
spread out.
to, the stormwater fee you're referring to was part of the memo of understanding and was passed by the council, and you say 3 years ago, I'm not sure it was quite that long ago, but that was part of the memo of understanding as well, which was to create the fee. It's one of the reasons why the stormwater is currently is in such poor shape in terms of money, and this is the issue we're trying to deal with, which is a brand new stormwater system that a fee just recently came in, and now meeting some of these memo understandings. And we also had a project 2 years ago that was the head gate, the gates, which was a $250,000 fee. So there's been ongoing fees. It wasn't just like we save up for this. These are continuous and ongoing fees as part of this memo of understanding.
We had to borrow money from our sanitary sewer system, our fund, $230,000. We had to write a check to the San Diego Water Control District. We had to borrow, the Stormwater Fund had to borrow $230,000 to write them a check for $230,000 for them to do work on their head gates. We didn't have a stormwater fund. We had to borrow that money. And so we're slowly paying that back. I understand what your questions are. Those were my questions when I started here. Why are we in such dire straits here? But all you have to do is look at the funds. Look at the fund balances on each one of my funds or each one of the Public Works funds, and you can see there's a huge difference between the two, and that's because we never had a stormwater fund. We
And
just did not
there's
have
no
one.
extra money to put away for it. It's like we couldn't take it out of what wasn't there, or take it away from a really needed thing that needed to happen. It was just like there was just no money to do more.
Councilor Cronquist.
We've been collecting was it roughly $2? I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me. $2 or $3 stormwater from roughly, is it 2,800 households?
No, the fee, I believe, is up to $5.50.
Yeah, we're up to $5.
It's been increasing 50 cents a year.
Okay.
The agreement is, that fee increase is gone as of this year, and so the proposed fee is only, a CPI type of adjustment this year.
Which is great. So we have roughly how many customers? 2,800 we're collecting this off of?
I think it's going to be more than that. I mean, it's all your commercial, all your industrial, it's
We're
going to be in the
just-
3,500 range.
So if we've been collecting $2 by 2,800 by 3 years, we should have $3,738,960. And agree, it's probably more than that, and the fees have gone up. I'm looking at $2 times 12 months per year, times
I'm not even going to bother to do
1228.
the math, because your number's so far off, it's not
Well, that's
even-
fine. That's what I'm trying to understand. The idea is why our number's so far off.
Yeah, I think all we have to do is look at the budget for the last 3 or 4 years, and you can see, as Lance has said, what's been collected in this fund, and say go back to just stormwater, and we went through that.
And this is just an off-topic thing, Lance. Do you know that the hydropower ditch behind my house?
Hey, Councilor Cronquist, if it's off topic, we need to stay in order, please.
Well, we give him an option to get water.
In order, please.
Yeah, the customer receipts in this budget, or in the stormwater fund, are $250,000 a year going back to 15-16. They're up to 278 this year. So 3 years, you're not even collecting $1 million, and you're spending, whatever you're collecting is being spent on operations and a little bit of capital. So there is no money in stormwater to pay for this type of facility. And the reason you're dealing with it now is Lance has indicated, and I think, Keith as well, is you have this MOU, this agreement, that also involves getting an earmark of $1,544,000 from the state. It's an earmark. They're sitting over there waiting for the city to do something in order to release the dollars. And at some point, the earmark goes away. And is the community going to walk away from $381,000 in order to save the money up itself to pay for something down the road that may or may not happen. And I think, the management here is proposing to you to solve this, get it done, get the 381, and to the degree that they can find a way to be more efficient with, the things that Lance talked about, getting, property owners that are nearby or others to reduce the cost of moving that dirt out of there, that will reduce the amount of debt that's needed in order to complete the project.
Speaking of that,
it does need to get done this year, I think.
Speaking of that earmark, it actually expired January 2018. I went and had to get an extension till January 2019. Had they not given me an extension, which they normally do not, for lottery fund dollars, we would have lost $381,000. And I understand that's bad, but I'm telling you, we've been working nonstop for the last 3 years to try to find a facility.
Do you have a question, Mr. Walker?
Yes. I've never read the MOU. Is this